Do do do. Do
something!
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so big welcome to the newest addition to Overwatch, as well as video game characters named Ashe. Ashe. Before we get started, does she remind anyone else of Trinisha Draken from the Tales of the Catty J series? I mean, both come from a wealthy family, both get caught up in the wrong crowd, both become the leaders of a ruthless gang of criminals, and both have ties to a rugged and roguish hero/anti-hero. No? Just me? Well, okay then. A quick look at Ashe's backstory tells us that she grew up in a wealthy family, though was ignored for most of her childhood, started acting out and hanging with the wrong crowd, and due to a chance meeting with a local ruffian, she turned to a life of crime, eventually forming the Deadlock Gang with a few of her associates. There are numerous reasons why I like her backstory more than some of the more recent heroes, so let's get right into it. 1. Foreshadowed introduction. Kinda. Her introduction is a bit more organic than Moira's, oh by the way, this creepy science chick was also there and turned Reyes into Reaper, probably, maybe. Or Hammond's, oh by the way, the Wacky Moon Lab also created super genius hamsters too. Or Brigitte's, yeah, she used to hang with Reinhardt, but then she started to lift and now she's here also. The Deadlock Gang has been established since the beginning of the game, and showing us one of its leaders is a nice addition that doesn't come out of left field. This, coupled with the modifications to the Route 66 map in-game, made the reveal feel more consistent. And at least she isn't a hamster, as far as we know. 2. Fleshes out the Deadlock Gang more. Unlike Talon or Wishkar, kinda, we never got much info on this ruthless band of criminals. All we knew was that they mostly dealt in robbery and illegal arms dealing, and that McCree was a member at some point. With the introduction of Ashe, we learned that there's actually 3 more founding members. Maybe this guy? Or this guy? Probably not this guy. We also learned that the gang came into conflict with numerous other criminal groups that often resulted in bloodshed, hinting at other violent organizations who may or may not come into play later. But that's not all. According to her bio, Ashe actually negotiated a truce/alliance with these gangs, proposing a set of principles so that they wouldn't hinder one another. Apparently these principles are: keep your word, don't work with the law, respect each other's territory, always punish betrayal. By these rules, it seems the Southwest has a pretty well-organized and stable criminal underworld, giving off a really ominous us versus them feel as far as the law is concerned. It would be interesting to see just how much power and influence these gangs have across this territory, maybe forcing the local authorities to apply more and more drastic measures to keep the peace. 3. Her family. It's a long shot, but Ashe's parents are apparently highly sought-after business consultants and coaches for powerful CEOs around the world. Now, who do we know who has their fingers in many corporate and economical pies? Aside from every businessman on Earth, of course. Yeah, Talon, how'd you guess? It would be interesting to find out that the Ashe family is actually in cahoots with them or even Wishkar, helping them shape and manipulate the corporate world to their benefit. Or maybe they just gave EA and Activision the idea of loot boxes, in which case I think we just found the true villains of Overwatch. 4. Connection to others. Okay, this one's tricky. Originally, I was going to make the point that it's pretty great that Ashe turned to a life of crime thanks to McCree, and then McCree himself left said life, thus creating a lot of conflict between the two, as it says in the character description. But a chance meeting with a local ruffian named Jesse McCree and an impromptu string of crimes committed together opened her eyes to her true calling. But then in the developer update, Jeff said the following.
So that eventually led her to found the Deadlock Gang, and she eventually attracted people such as McCree into that gang.
Okay, a little inconsistency. Can't expect Daddy Jeff to be 100% in the loop with everything, no biggie. But then there's this interaction between Ashe and McCree.
You'd still be on a farm if it weren't for me.
Some days that doesn't sound so bad.
Okay, so apparently Ashe formed the gang and then recruited McCree. Okay, that's much less interesting. But wait, there's the statement by lead writer and primary lore giver Michael Chu. Players should not put too much weight on in-game voice line interactions when attempting to gain insight into character relationships. Okay, screw it, we're going with version A, because McCree dragging/tempting a spoiled and neglected rich girl into a bunch of crimes that eventually turn her into a ruthless criminal mastermind, only for him to switch sides and have to fight against that person, is 10 times more engaging than bored rich girl formed a gang and dragged bored farm boy along. We've already lost a ton of character depth when we found out Mercy did not turn Reyes into Edgelord Supreme. We're not losing this one. So, this gives McCree so much more depth since his reckless behavior in his youth led someone else down a path that is less than ideal. Sure, Ashe might have ended up there anyway, but I doubt that eases McCree's guilt any. Also, having McCree leave Deadlock and join Overwatch puts him in a position where he has to confront the person he helped create, a sort of paying for your sins kind of deal. That's not even mentioning that Reyes and Morrison were constantly working towards bringing down the gang back when Overwatch was intact, so McCree being such a huge part of a problem is pretty damn interesting. So that's why Ashe's connection to another hero is cool and interesting. Unless it isn't. 5. Alliances. While still neutralish in the whole Talon vs Overwatch save the world / conquer the world narrative, it's hard to see her and her gang joining Overwatch due to their greedy, selfish, and rebellious nature. If I had to take an educated guess for their place in the story, I'd wager they'll ally themselves with Talon, helping them cause major havoc. However, Talon being Talon, things go a bit too far, even for a ruthless group of outlaws like the Deadlock Gang, and thus, nudged a bit by McCree, they switch sides and help Overwatch from then on, only to go back to their lovable, roguish, stealing weapons of mass destruction as ways once the conflict is done. It's kinda like how you don't really know what Sombra's end goal is, and thus have numerous possibilities, and very much unlike Hammond, who's apparently only here because he is searching for adventure, which is exactly the kind of motivation a D&D player gives his DM when they only thought about their character for 5 minutes. 6. A real femme fatale. She's a much better executed villainess than Widowmaker, since she takes an active role in her own story and is a much more dynamic personality. Ashe was neglected as a child and started acting out, versus Widowmaker, who just happened to be married to a member of Overwatch. Ashe pursued a life of crime since she enjoyed the thrill, the loot, but most importantly, the camaraderie between herself and her gang, as opposed to Widowmaker, who just got kidnapped and brainwashed to enjoy nothing but killing. Ashe is much more interesting to watch, since we've seen her be cool and sarcastic, but also lose her cool and become furious and volatile, whereas Widowmaker is just emotionless and reacts to most things with a dismissive ugh. Ashe also has pretty clear goals: amass wealth, power, and influence, and greatly values competence, trust, and loyalty, whereas Widowmaker's goal is pretty much a headshot, which also happens to be what she values greatly. So to sum up, her introduction was more organic than the recent ones, she gives some insight into an opposing faction, her influential family have a lot of narrative potential, her clear and definite connection to McCree gives both of them some depth, her gang could fill a big role in the greater scheme of things, and she's a better Widow, narratively and possibly mechanically. As I said, from a narrative standpoint, I think she's great. But if you'll excuse the sudden shift in video topic, ding, I do have some concerns gameplay-wise. She's a DPS character, and while the last 3 heroes released were a tank and 2 supports, it's still pretty evident that DPS heroes still far outweigh tanks/supports, causing a general imbalance in matchmaking. I know at BlizzCon Jeff said they're aware of this problem and are working on 6 new heroes at the moment, but that's not really gonna help if those heroes still take 3 months each to be released. Even as a DPS, I don't quite see the point of her kit. Orisa was added to have another shield-centric tank and to give Reinhardt some time off. Moira was added to have another main healer and to let an animator indulge in his love of Naruto. Brigitte was added to counter dive comp and to introduce an element of survival horror to the game, since just like Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers, the moment Brigitte gets close to you, you're fucked. But Ashe is just a hit scan with some area denial. The only character that is significantly affected by another long-range hit scan is Pharah, but she hasn't been a real problem, on PC anyways, for a while now. Plus, with the recent buffs to McCree and Soldier, as well as the nerf to Mercy's healing, I feel like we'll be hearing even more Pharah ultimates cut short by a bullet to the head. The big problem nowadays is Goats comp 3 tank 3 supports and just ram everything, and it might be my lack of game sense acting up again, but I don't see how Ashe can neutralize the composition with a measly stick of dynamite. Whatever her impact may be, I'm glad she's a high skill hero, since they usually tend to be underpowered and need to be tweaked to become viable, whereas the lower skill heroes are usually the opposite, being far too strong and need to be reined in slowly. All in all, I'm pretty psyched about Ashe and hope the 6 heroes currently in the works are at least as lore/relation centric as her and introduce more crazy ideas, like Bob as an ultimate. What's your opinion on Infiltrator class Cowgirl Commander Shepard? Fun and exciting for the potential high skill plays? Boring due to just being a chick with a gun? Let me know down below, and as always, thanks for watching.